thank you so much for the respect and attention that you knew to give as soon as somebody approached the podium. You have an opportunity today that is just almost will be unparalleled, that your children will not have. You have the opportunity today to hear firsthand about one of the most cataclysmic events that will ever affect civilization, from Fritz Ottenheimer and Sam Weinreb. They will talk to us about their personal experiences involving World War II and the Holocaust. We also have, as a speaker today, Philip Hom, who is a teenager, just past his teenage years, from Germany. And I'll let him tell you why he's here, and you'll find out what that's about. We are also honored to have in our audience today Mr. Weinreb's wife, Goldie, who will be with us but will not necessarily be speaking to us today. Each of these speakers will talk about their personal experiences and give you their perspective on their lives. As they speak, listen carefully. Write down ideas that occur to you. Write down questions on the note card that you've been provided. After their presentation, your teachers will collect your note cards, and I will try to sort them and bring up the ones that get asked the most often, and our speakers will answer them. Understand? Okay. Then let me introduce Mr. Fritz Ottenheimer.
Thank you, Mrs. Ruffalo. As you heard, your children, unfortunately, will not have the privilege of listening to a Holocaust witness or survivor. Actually, my first wish would be that I could still be around to talk to your children, but it's not very likely, since I'm 85 years old now. Anyway, my own experiences start many years ago. I was born in Germany, in the town of Constance. It's at the southern end of Germany, right on the border of Switzerland. And I was 8 years old when Hitler came to power. 8-year-olds don't usually get too excited about what's happening in the government, but even I could tell that something very serious was going on, a very drastic change in affecting our lives. Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany, became the leader of Germany in 1933, at which time I was 8 years old, as I mentioned. And my father, on this particular day, which was 2 months after Hitler's takeover, my father was on his way to opening up a little store that we had in Constance one morning. It was 2 months after Hitler came in. There were loudspeakers on that morning around town calling on the German people to, quote, "Don't buy from the Jewish stores, buy from German stores." Well, it must have been interesting news to my father to realize that he was no longer a German. We always thought of ourselves as being Germans. When he got to the store, he saw a stormtrooper, a uniformed Nazi, standing in front of the store, and obviously to discourage people from going into the store. Well, my father turned around, went back home, came back a few minutes later, carrying a little bag this time, and he walked past the stormtrooper, unlocked the door, went into the store. He pulled all the shirts, ties, socks, and things out of the store window and spread out his World War I medals in the windows. My father had been a German soldier fighting for his fatherland, for Germany, in World War I, and he had won these medals. Then he went outside and stood next to the stormtrooper and rolled up the sleeve on his right arm, exposing his war injury where a bullet had shattered his right elbow and left his arm stiff for the rest of his life. And he simply stood there and waited next to the stormtrooper. Some people came who knew my father, who knew his war record, and they went up to the stormtrooper and explained very calmly that, yes, Mr. Oppenheimer is indeed a German, a good German who risked his life, gave up the use of his right arm in order to help to defend Germany as he saw it. Well, the stormtrooper wasn't interested in that kind of information, tried to ignore it, but soon there was a whole group of people standing around him, all yelling at him at the same time, and he finally got the message. He walked away. And for the rest of the day, people came into our store to tell my parents that they did not approve of what their government was doing to us or to our people. Now, mind you, this was 2 months after Hitler came to power. It was right at the beginning, and people were not afraid yet to give their opinions and to criticize what their government was doing. But that didn't last very long. Hitler's propaganda machine went into operation, spreading all kinds of supposed information about the Jewish people, but actually simply a lot of lies, saying that all the problems of that time were the fault of the Jewish people, that the Jews were trying to destroy Germany and take over the world, that the Jews were a bunch of criminals, dirty, foreigners, not really Germans. Well, I think at first people didn't believe these lies because they knew better. They had Jewish friends and acquaintances, and they knew that this was not the kind of people that these Jews were. But still, it did have its effect. People were afraid to be seen going into Jewish stores. We lost our little store, our main source of income up to that time. And things got worse after that. Certainly financially, we had trouble making ends meet. Early 1938, Hitler announced to the world that he was taking over Austria. Austria was the country that he himself had been born in, and he said that Austria was going to be absorbed into Germany. There were a lot of protests from leaders around the world. You can't just take over another country. But by this time, Germany had the strongest army in the world. Hitler, one of the first things Hitler did was to immediately get ready for the next war. It was obvious to the German people that that's what he was aiming for. Apparently it was not so obvious to other countries because they were not prepared for this. So when Hitler said he's going to take over Austria, no other country was willing or strong enough to oppose this. On the designated date, the German army simply walked into Austria. There was no fighting, no resistance. Actually, the streets were lined by people, thousands of Austrians, waving flags,